Hi there, and welcome to the 23rd episode of Career Stories Live. So I'm back for the second time today, and I'm joined now by Dan Roth, who is a senior DEI program manager, L&D expert, and keynote speaker. So welcome, Dan. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for making this and pulling double duty today. That's I know what that's like, and it's never easy.
Oh, it's great. I can see there's a couple of people watching already, so please do comment to let us know that you're here, where you're joining from, and feel free to ask any questions and share your experience in the comments. And if you're watching on replay later, then obviously we'll come back and answer questions and comments then. So just in case there's anyone watching that hasn't seen before, because I know Dan's streaming to his pages as well. So the basis for my lives really is I've always been interested in what people do and why they do it. I really like learning about different roles and career paths. I'm a career coach, so my aim really is to inspire thought about what people could do and then get advice from my guests on kind of career tips for people that are watching. So that's the idea. So Dan, straight over to you. Could you give us a brief intro to you and what it is you're doing right now?
Brief is never simple with me, but I will do my best. And I'll tell people two things right off the bat. One, I have ADHD. That's why this says think differently. Also, if you see me looking over here, I actually have both Sarah's screen profile pulled up as well as mine so that I can answer questions in real time. This is part of what I do as a producer. So I'm sort of just used to the multitasking. If you are not familiar with me, my name is Dan Roth. I have had a very wide and varied career path that has led me to really be where I'm supposed to be, which is, as you mentioned, as a senior diversity, equity, inclusion program manager, a keynote speaker. I do consultancy, and a lot of stuff a lot of people don't know about. And that's on top of being a full-time twin girl dad, which is my favorite thing to do in the entire world. So that is the shortest, most concise synopsis I could possibly provide. And yeah, I think everybody else I've ever been on their show is probably jealous because I've never kept it that short.
Excellent, amazing. Okay, so we got one comment in from Craig. So Craig saying the Black Knight is here from Bonnie, Scotland. Looking forward to this. So thank you for joining, Craig. He was on a few weeks ago.
Nice to see you, Craig. Well, nice to meet you, I should say.
Yeah, he's great. Okay, so I was going to ask you a bit about your LinkedIn banner, Dan. So what it is, I'm just going to quickly share your screen. Let me just see if it's
there. By the way, if you hear dogs, they will stop barking in a second.
That's fine. Actually, it's not going to let me show you your banner now because it's showing the live in your banner. But anyway.
So what I can do, let me see. What to do? I should be able to pull it up if you wanted me to. But let's, I don't know.
That's fine.
So my LinkedIn banner, actually, let me pull up Canva for a second because that's where I do all of my designs in. And here we go. It should be under this one. So part of the here, okay. Let me see if I can present my second screen. Okay.
While you're doing that, Cliff is saying, may the 4th be with you all. So thank you, Cliff. And it is actually my wedding anniversary today. So we chose a great day to get married on, May the 4th. Everyone always remembers that.
Congratulations. Okay, here we go. So this is the benefit of what I do. Okay. I know where everything is.
Yes.
So as you can see, there's a lot of slides at the bottom. And to be frank, I test different ones out. So this was one that I kept up for a while, talking about what I do in creating sustainable resources and programs. However, I really wanted something that was a little bit more clean.
Yeah.
So the thing with me is, as a senior diversity, equity, inclusion program manager, and really and a keynote speaker, my most requested keynote is called the Inclusion Revolution, A Path to Progress. And what it does is it speaks to turning passive allies, which is basically an ally is somebody that will sympathize with a marginalized group or body, to an active accomplice. An active accomplice looks at dismantling those structures that are creating those problems for those individuals and going from there. So within the confines of the specific banner, I talk about working to dismantle the structures at the center of systemic oppression. So as an accomplice, I go, and if there's an issue that's being faced within a corporation, I look at, well, what's the actual root cause? It's not
Okay.
pat on the back, listen, it's what's the root cause? I need to get to the root cause, and how do we work to disrupt that to create a more equitable environment? What are you prepared to lose speaks to the ideology that when you get into this work, when you get into the work that I do, and especially as a white individual, there's oftentimes situations where black individuals don't want me in the same space as them because they don't want another ally. White individuals think that I'm basically a turncoat. So there's a lot of times you realize that family and friends that you've known forever are still seeing things on sort of a surface level.
Okay.
Doesn't always equate. So what are you prepared to lose? I've had friends that have stopped engaging with their family because it was so one-sided. And then to the left there you have both the autism spectrum disorder symbol as well as the neurodiversity ribbon, which my daughter is on the spectrum.
Okay.
And I am neurodiverse. So it was really important to me to show that. And then the Northern Lights are just something I've been obsessed with for a long time.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked that backing.
Yeah, that's good. Excellent. Thank you for that. That's really helpful to hear all of that.
Well, you know what? You bringing it up makes me think I probably need to clarify. So talk about a good coach pointing things out.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so early careers. So I always find this really interesting. Did you have a job when you were at school or at college? And if so, has that helped you in your actual career?
No, and no. So
Okay.
let me rephrase that. I started my career at age 15 working at
Okay.
Old Navy.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first job. I worked pretty much retail all through college.
Yeah.
My degree is in journalism. So right after college, I got a job as a managing editor for a print news publication, a local print news publication. I remember going in there and I had no concept of money. They offered me something like $21,000, which I think is probably about 19, or I forget what the exchange rate is, but maybe like 19,000 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember being so excited, and only later on did I recognize that, okay, that's poverty level. But from there, it was kind of peculiar because my entire life I had spent focusing on trying to overcome my ADHD. So the bulk majority of my life up to that point was focused on schooling and just passing.
Yeah.
And then I got to a point right around age 22 or 23 where socially I started to mature a little bit, and I started putting more of an emphasis on social life than I did my work. And there were multiple occasions that I could say I made bad decisions where I chose social over work. And I got to be honest with you, I'm a really good writer, but I wasn't very good at my job.
Right.
So I kind of hopped between careers for the gross majority of the next 13, 15 years. So I'm 38. I'll be 39 in August. So I did everything from working retail to I got a job in telecommunications. You see Cliff Brown, that's right there. He's my best friend in the world. I met him while working at a company called Time Warner Cable. Then I wound up falling into healthcare. Healthcare led to project management, and then that led to the layoffs that happened at the beginning of the pandemic, which forced me into action, which led me to being a recruiter, and a recruiter going back to my DEI roots. So there is a lot there.
There's a lot there. Yeah, no, it's good. No, it's interesting you say you fell into the role. So was that through like a referral from someone, or you just happened to?
It was the healthcare was a contract role. So
yeah,
basically, and I'm not going to name the specific company, even though it's kind of widely recognized. I really don't like them. But what happened is, when I was at Time Warner Cable, I saw sort of a ceiling, and there was an opportunity with a company to make a lot more money that hadn't hired in a long time.
Yeah.
But it was with a sales role, and I'm not a salesperson.
Yeah.
So I got in there, and I found out that they had hired 90 some odd people, but by the time that I sort of left / got let go, they were down to like 13. So basically they hired a lot to find the best of the best for what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that it kind of led me into that is because that's the only role that I needed to take time off in order to recover mentally.
Right.
Well, now government assistance had run out for me, my unemployment, and I had a job that fell through when I tried to negotiate. So I was offered, one day I was offered this contract opportunity for this healthcare company, and it was doing financial assistance for multiple sclerosis. So basically what I was doing is these drug manufacturers would have clinical research organizations be the third party to do all their funding. So like, let's say you had a medication like Aubagio, they would have a financial assistance program, whether it's a coupon program to help you pay for the cost.
Okay.
What I was there to do was to help those patients get their medication, qualify them for the program. But then I also did like open enrollment for insurance. I was surprisingly good at it, but then I got let go from my contract 2 weeks before my wedding. So that was not the most fun period in the world, but that's how I sort of fell into it.
Right. Yeah. No, that must have been stressful just before your wedding as well.
That job was what eventually led me to working at home.
Okay.
I had such severe anxiety, constantly feeling like I was being scrutinized. And I just this was even before I sort of came into myself. I had enough. Like, I developed physical ailments as a result of the anxiety. I wound up having overactive bladder because that was stress induced. That's what the doctors diagnosed it as.
Right.
So I started working from home from there. But look, my career, if it could be defined by a couple words, one of them is definitely going to be stressful.
Right.
Even now, when I know exactly what I'm meant to do, what I need to do, even when I live, this is what I live for.
Yeah.
It's still stressful.
Yeah.
So it's sort of an interesting dichotomy. And I think people feel like they could avoid that when they find that ideal role, but we're a product of our surroundings and the economy and all these different systems. So there's always this adaptability that we have to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a comment from Kevin saying, Dan and Sarah rock. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for joining again.
I adore Kevin. By the way, I know it's May the 4th. Here's what I'm going to say. I know a lot of people are Star Wars fans. I am a Spaceballs fan. So from me to everyone out there, may the Schwartz be with you.
I'm sure that resonates with loads of people, but I don't know what that is.
So,
and I've only watched Star Wars once, so I'm
gotcha. Okay, so I'm not even gonna. So basically, it's a Mel Brooks parody on Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
but I'm not going to go overly in depth if you only seen Star Wars once, and I have a high level of respect for you. Unless you say that you watch Star Trek, and I just don't.
No, never
I
seen
hate,
that.
yeah,
Never
okay,
seen
I
that.
hate Star Trek, so that's
No,
all good. I'm going to
I've never
alienate a
seen
lot
that.
of your audience.
And that
That's
was the
okay.
funniest thing, is that we got married on May the 4th because it was a nice day. And so many people are like, oh, I can't believe you've chosen Star Wars Day to get married. We're like, what?
Well, before it was Star Wars Day, it was Sarah Burgess Day.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
all is good.
Yeah.
Sense of irony there,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Very funny.
George Lucas doesn't own everything, so
No, this is true. This is true. So I was going to quickly go back to Old Navy there, because so my kids are 21 and 17, but before my first was bought, my mum and dad went over to New York and found the Old Navy store and came back. We had like a whole suitcase full of Old Navy clothes for my child before he was even born. That's great.
it was an interesting experience. Like,
Yeah.
I had no social skills at all, and I remember starting off as a seasonal employee, and then I get brought on full time, but they stuck me in the fitting room.
Right. Okay.
And I remember one day I went to the boss or the manager at the time. I said, "Hey, can I get out of the fitting room? I'm getting claustrophobic." And she wound up yelling at me, "How dare you? I gave you a chance."
No
And like
way.
at the time, it was like this colossal like defeat. And looking back on it, I'm like, she just had a fit about somebody asking to get out of the fitting room. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, of all the problems in the world, do we need that one?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, fitting rooms are stinky,
Yeah. I can imagine.
and people do weird
And don't
stuff in
lie.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
look at Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso does a lot of weird stuff in the fitting room, or so I
Yeah.
would think. Yeah, footballers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned your degree in journalism. So what was it that appealed to you about that? Was that something that you always wanted to do?
No, I actually went to school for business management. The problem is that I'm very good at basic math and basic computing. However, one of the prerequisites was a whole bunch of math courses, and I couldn't pass them. I
Mm,
legit couldn't pass them. So I got to a point, and my dad said to me, he's like, "You know what, Dan? You're really good, a really good writer. Why don't you do that?"
mm,
And I didn't really think about it twice. I just went into journalism. Now, the benefit was
mm,
that because I was really good at it, I was able to go from doing very, very poorly in school to raising my GPA and my major to around a 3.0. So that was really good. Now, the negative was that I still found journalism to be very stressful because I'm a perfectionist. So when I sit
yeah,
down to write an article, like, well, people see my newsletters. Um, Oftentimes I'll spend 3-4 hours writing
right.
because I'm so analytical about how I do things. Plus, with journalism, there's feature writing, there's inverted pyramid, so direct news style, there's internet, there's all different variations, and I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
I mean, even going back, like, I learned how to be a professional speaker by speaking to my mother's kindergarten class. She was a teacher. I read to them every week while I was growing up. So the time I'm 7 to maybe till I graduated high school, I went into their class. And my thing is, if you can read, if you can keep a 5-year-old's attention, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
So I was always a feature writer, and I went into it, and look, I had some really cool opportunities. I got to do a radio interview with Jeff Daniels of Dumb and Dumber fame. I had opportunities, and please don't hate me, to interview Keira Knightley.
Ah,
I That's the one I regret, and the reason I turned that down is because I was living in New Jersey at the time, and I wasn't comfortable going into New York City on my own, and I would have had to do that. So I had a lot of great opportunities, and
mm,
it was fun, but I also don't necessarily feel like my college. Uh, I don't know if I blame myself or the college for not putting me in a position to succeed in the real world, because when you're on a university campus as a journalist, it's a lot different story than working in a public atmosphere where you're dealing with politicians and all these different people.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when I got into the real world, when I got that title of managing editor, I was hampered by fear.
Yeah.
And so I would rely on my writers to do all the writing, and I kind of just sat back and did uh, the editing in the background. Also, just because I've never talked about this,
Mm.
um, the building that we're in, like I knew it was like this old school, like local town thing because there was mold and mildew like the entire time, like the entire roof was beat up. It was a weird situation to be in, but everything's a learning experience.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a really good point, what you're saying about the journalism and not being prepared for the real world. So I've actually got a friend whose daughter is about to go to university to do journalism. And one of the things that they have at this particular university is they send the students out to kind of the courts to hear all of the stuff that's going on, and they get exposed to all this really graphic stuff. But they've got a counselling program at the college, so the kids are exposed to it all, but then they've got someone to offload to. And I thought, actually, that's really good kind of pastoral care. So sounds like that's definitely needed.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. I have a really interesting story for you. And this is why I stopped doing journalism. But I don't think I've told this story before. So the first year I'm in San Diego, my wife brings me, well, my now wife brings me to a Yankee game, Yankees versus Padres. And I'm a talkative individual, if anybody can't tell, at least in public. So I'm talking to this guy behind me, and we're chatting up. He's like, "Hey, give me your contact information. I want to, I want to follow up." So about 3 weeks later, I get a call from him. He has a friend who's an executive producer at ESPN, and he says, "I'm going to get you a talk, and let's see if we could get you a job with ESPN." So now I'm going from like this nobody to having this
Mm.
opportunity with ESPN. So I jump on this call, and I remember exactly where I was. And this high-ranking executive from ESPN says to me, he's like, Dan, I could potentially get you something here, but here's the deal. You're going to have to move around every 6 months, take whatever jobs you could get. You're probably not going to make more than $40,000 a year until you're 40 years old. You need to choose if that's a life you want to live. Now, if this had been 5 or 6 years earlier, I would have jumped on it.
Yeah.
However, even being the first year with my now wife, I knew that she was going to be my wife, and I had a decision to make. And ultimately, I felt like it wasn't a sustainable industry for me to be in, knowing that my long-term goal was to marry my wife, Jen, and then eventually have kids.
Yeah.
So at that point, that ended a period of time where I was writing all the time. It wasn't actually until I came on LinkedIn that I fell back in love with writing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you. I can see Gabe has arrived, so thank you for watching.
Let me ask you a question. Do you actually believe his name is pronounced Gabe?
I don't know. I've not listened to his name before, so I don't know.
So that was actually a joke that people made.
Was it? Okay.
His name is just Gabe.
Gabe, really?
So, and I'm not saying that to correct you. I'm saying because a lot of people just don't know.
No.
Gabe is one of my best friends in the world. I bust his chops all the time, but when push comes to shove, there's not many individuals as nice as he is, including Kevin Turner. I mean, anytime you have somebody that in their LinkedIn URL calls themselves El Presidente, there's got to be some sort of ego there. Hi, Kevin.
Sorry, my dog's barking now. So I was going to move on to your keynotes. So you've got 4 keynotes that you offer. So how did you choose what you offer?
So this was a really extensive process. So at the turn of Clubhouse and the turn of starting to speak out on LinkedIn, it was really important to me to understand my voice. So I wound up doing podcast after podcast. I probably did 250 over a year and a half period. And over time, this evolved and changed. Uh, because it takes more than a day to find your voice. So the thing with it is that as I'm doing these things, as I'm getting more involved, as I'm determining this is where I want to be, it sharpened the tools. Now, the easy one for me to talk about is very much in line with what we're talking about here, which is how I went from a bullied kid to to a global stage where I do have a global presence. And that side of it. Then I look at, well, what have I overcome? So I talk about my journey in reframing my neurodiversity
Mhm.
and really using it as something that benefits me. Like my hyper focus is how I got to where I'm at. So, but it wasn't until I opened up about who I am, and reframed it that I really started to excel.
Yeah.
So that's a big portion where I talk about neurodiversity. I'm trying to remember. So I'm missing. Okay, so then you have The Accomplice, a white anti-racist guide to creating change. So this is actually somewhat in line with the post I just did about my newsletters, where I'm doing a series about uh, the DEI corporate playbook. So I was not always a model citizen to emulate when it comes to being an accomplice. I had to go through a lot of learning curves. I had to go through a lot of hard times in education and listening
Mm.
and realizing it wasn't about my voice, it was about other voices. So the accomplice really talks about what it means and the processing going from a place of ambivalence to a place of action. And then the one that I'm most known for doing, an inclusion revolution, a path to progress. This has really been my highlight reel keynote. I was able to do it at the Career Thought Leaders Conference about a month and a half ago, and I feel like I have to say the following statement over and over again because I still don't believe it, but I wound up getting a standing ovation. And what that delves into is, again, it sets the tone for how to go from a passive ally to active accomplice. But I do it through storytelling. So I
Yeah.
tell three very, very personal stories of exclusion, uh, and then talk about, well, how do we take that and create a system of inclusion? What are proactive steps? What can you do? What path is this on? And the reason that I use the reason excuse me, the reason I use storytelling is because one of my mentors, Jen Buck, once said to me, she's like, because so I was trying to force feed these, I was trying to write them brand new, and she said, why aren't you just doing what you do best? And I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah. So by storytelling, especially around such sensitive topics, it evokes emotion and allows all different people to connect in their own way. You're not
Yeah.
forcing one particular. Um, and by doing that, it allows people to get all different things out of it. And that's what I really love doing. And the stories I tell are not easy for me to share. I
No.
talk about my personal journey. I talk about almost losing my wife during childbirth and what she had to deal with her company. I
Mm.
talk about one of my best friends that I worked with at Amazon and how she was marginalized within the system. Uh, they're not easy stories to tell, but if it feels like the heart of the story is to tell,
Yeah.
the more effective it is.
Yeah.
And
Relate and yeah.
yeah, and the thing about me is people see me posting personal stuff all the time.
Yeah.
It's not that I enjoy posting personal stuff. I don't want anybody to ever think that. The reason I post personal stuff is because my belief is that my mission is greater than my individual sacrifice.
Mm.
And I understand that I'm in a place where I have the opportunity and I don't like using this term, to be a role model, to give access to other people so that they feel empowered, because it takes people speaking up and speaking out and taking that risk in order to create change. And I'm okay with that. In
Mm,
fact, I have to. Uh, and it goes really to the core. And I talk about this every single time. There's nothing I do in life that's not a direct representation of the example I want to set for my children.
yeah. No, that's really good. And that kind of answers my next question, which is about values. So pretty much everyone that's been on so far has talked about their values in some way. So, and do your personal values have an impact on the type of work that you take on? So it sounds like
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's how I knew I had my calling,
Yeah. Yeah.
because a lot of people spend a bulk majority of their lives doing jobs that maybe don't align with their values.
Yeah.
And not everybody has a choice. Like, I'm not sitting here
Yeah.
saying everybody has a choice. But for me, when I stepped into that recruitment role and I started working globally, and I realized that there was so much intersectionality
Mhm.
between the moral, the ethical, as well as the work, that I was able to really mold it together and create this really great thing.
Mm.
And that's really what it's about. But at the end of the day, my children are not growing up in a global society that pays women fairly. That
Mhm.
the as much as we like to falsify this, the glass door and the sticky floor and the glass ceiling still very much exist. And morally and ethically, if I don't do everything I can to break those, to clean them up, then I don't know what I'm doing as a father. It's my
Yeah.
responsibility to them to do it, because otherwise, uh, we say, you always want your children to be better and more than you.
Yeah.
Well, how can they do that if they don't have the grounding, if they're getting stuck?
Yeah.
That saying is very Anglo-Saxon
Mm.
in nature, and I'm not for that.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm sure people have got a lot to think about after what you said today, Dan. It's been really interesting. And I know we're running short of time now,
I
so
thought we were here for an hour. So
oh, really? Oh, no. Okay, that's cool. No, they're normally about half an hour, so that's
yeah,
fine.
I
So you'll be
just I tend to always prepare for an hour.
that's fine.
That
Fine.
Yeah. So, but it's up to you, because it's your anniversary.
Yeah.
But I
Oh,
got
he's
time off.
away. He's gone on holiday with his friends, so, you know.
Ooh, I don't know
It's a
what to.
bit of a oh, no, 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 it's fine. It's a bit of a running joke that, because it's always a bank holiday weekend when our anniversary is, and always one of us is away with friends. It's very funny. Everyone else laughs, but it's fine. We've been married 27 years, you know.
You know what? I get that, but I'm telling you, I know my wife, and I've been with her 11 years now. The second, if I ever tried to do that, let me tell you something. I had the opportunity. No, it didn't turn out, but I had the opportunity to. I was asked to speak at a very, very big engagement. It would have been honestly life changing, in August, but it was 2 days before my kid's birthday, and my wife said, "That better be the shortest turnaround time you've ever seen in your life." Um, but I also wouldn't, I wouldn't miss it. I'm not taking anything away if that's the relationship you have. It
Yeah,
just
it's
sort of
fine. It's
blows my
fine.
mind.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Like, it's not even in my sphere of possibility.
No, it's absolutely fine. We both, you know, it's fine. We've been married that long, so it's not gonna change anything.
No, I get that. And if the relationship is good, and obviously it is at
It
27
is.
years, then
Yeah,
whatever you're doing is working, and
definitely.
all the power to you. Actually, I'm kind of jealous that your husband went on holiday. We So I got married in 2017. We got married in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
Believe it or not, it was a lot less expensive than getting married here in San Diego, where I am now. And then we were supposed to go back to Hawaii for our anniversary, but my wife got pregnant and she developed hyperemesis, which is basically morning sickness that lasts the entire pregnancy.
Oh,
So she
wow.
wasn't able to go. So we quite literally haven't had a vacation or gone anywhere since
Mm,
2017.
wow.
Yeah, it's something I'm hoping to change, but between the pandemic and
Yeah, yeah.
having twins, like my parents live 30 minutes away from or 20 minutes away from Disney World in Orlando. Um, but it's a scary thought, like taking two kids over and
Yeah, yeah,
so, but we need to because I was
yeah.
very privileged, and I'll use that word very poignantly, growing up because I was able to travel all over the place,
Mm,
and I want my kids to have that experience. But I also have to find a job first,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
there's a lot to do.
Lot to do. Yeah. Okay. So I normally ask people about some advice for something specific. So I thought, oh, after what we've been just talking about, I wonder if you've got some advice that you would give to maybe someone who's got ADHD, who's looking for their first job. What kind of advice might you give to people?
Interesting question.
Mm.
And you're full of interesting questions. And I've really, by the way, I want to say before it gets too far, I've really enjoyed spending time with you today. You're
Oh,
very,
thank
very
you.
easy to talk to, and that doesn't surprise me at all, knowing you.
Thank you.
Um, I'm a very direct person, and it's kind of a you love me or hate me for it, but either way, uh, the best thing somebody with ADHD or somebody that's neurodiverse, somebody that has disabilities, because this is the full spectrum,
Yeah,
can do is have the courage to advocate for themselves.
yeah,
And we live in a society that still has very much conscious bias when it relates to disability and inclusion in that regard. And whenever somebody puts themselves out there, they take a very, very big risk.
mm,
In my personal opinion, and again, this is only my personal opinion, it's more important to me to put myself in a position to succeed than it is to hide who I am and be susceptible to failing
mm,
because I haven't advocated for myself. So if you're in that position, I would say advocate for yourself. And that includes, by the way, looking at a company's website and seeing if they have accommodations, whether it's
yeah,
for the interview or otherwise. Most people don't
yeah,
look.
yeah,
I can't talk about Amazon too much, but one thing I could say from my time working there is they have an accommodation program and it's a direct number into a line and it's not part of human resources. So they'll talk to you, see what accommodations you need, and then they'll guide you all the way through the interview process and forward.
yeah,
These are things people don't really see or think about. But again, if it means you showing up as your best self, then come on, show up. Take
yeah.
take the opportunity to show up as your best self. There's no reason to hide in fear.
Yeah, no, that's true. And last week I had on Mark Crawley, who's based in the UK, and he heads up a recruitment company called Diversita, and it's basically off the back of his oldest son has autism, and I guess he was concerned about recruitment in the future, so he set up this recruitment company, and they specialize in finding roles for people who are neurodiverse in the IT industry. So it was a really interesting conversation last week, and very much what you're saying about talking to companies about what they can do to help you. And yeah, so I guess it's people having the courage, isn't it, to be able to put that
You
out
know,
there.
it's interesting that you said that because I was just introduced to a company that's doing similar work out of the US.
Mm, yeah.
There's not a lot of companies
No.
that do that, but we also live in a society where there's still a gross misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, autism spectrum disorder is a spectrum. There,
Yeah.
everybody has different levels of where they are, and none of them are defeatist. A lot of people you would meet that have autism, you would never know unless they said something.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's not that they're trying to hide it; it's that the it's nobody else's business unless they make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's ample opportunity for those now, but we still have a long way to go, and that's why I push for people to step up, stand up,
Yeah,
and talk about it, because the more corporate globally is not going to make changes unless it's forced.
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. Got a comment from John Asperian here saying you're going for it today with 2 live shows, Sarah. Big love for my boy Dan, the real Dan Roth. Excellent.
John, look, I don't like most guys. I almost get like soft talking about John because I don't think that there's many nicer people in the world.
No, that's true.
I have so much love and so much respect for John on a very visceral level. He like one of the true gems. You know, if you put him in the monarchy, I don't think anybody would complain that he's that good.
King John.
Okay, we're going back to Robin Hood there. Sorry, that's
I'm sure you'll love that.
No, I guess he'd have to have a porcelain throne. Okay, that's going down the gutter. Sorry, John.
No, that's fine. Okay, so no, it's been really interesting talking to you, Dan. Thank you. And I know that you've said a few times you've never talked about this before, so I really appreciate you kind of talking about some of this really personal stuff. It's been really good, and I think it's great for people to know that, you know, careers aren't always lovely and smooth, and that there are issues, and you kind of deal with them, and that makes you the person that you are, I guess.
You know, there's a lot, and the more I've grown up and the more I've matured, the more I've realized how much I've actually gone through. So when I say that I haven't talked about this stuff, it's because there's so much that it's impossible to bring up every single thing or to remember everything. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
For God's sakes, I worked at a retail store selling $1,000 pens for 3 years. I can't even read my own handwriting. Like, I've got stories out the kazoo. I pawned one of those pens for my first mattress when I moved out to San Diego. But yeah, it was a Mont Blanc. I think it retailed for like $1,200, and I got like $150 for it. There's so much to unpack, and I think as we get older, we have to unpack ourselves. Like there's so much repressed stuff that we don't even think about, and then how that affects our daily life. And I'm honestly scared of unpacking a lot of the stuff that I need to unpack, but I understand I need to in order to move forward from here. But yeah, this has been a really interesting conversation. When does your husband get back?
Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got a couple more days of freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna hang with the boys, go to a couple shows, you get drunk.
Out to the pub tonight for some gin. Yeah. So So thank you so much for coming on stage, Dan. It's been really good. And anyone that's watching on replay, please do feel free to ask your questions. I'll go back and answer them later on. And I'm back again next Thursday at 1 o'clock my normal time, when I'm going to be talking to Rebecca Stomps, who is the Alumni Relations Manager at Newcastle University Business School. So I'm really looking forward to talking to her about her career working in academia, but also kind of advice for students, I guess. They're going to be coming out of that. So that's good. So thanks again, Dan. I can just see comments coming up. Okay. So, Kevin saying split comments coming through on the okay, yeah. And we mentioned that earlier, didn't we, Dan? Actually, so there's comments on both my channel and yours. So yeah,
that's something I deal with a lot in the show I produce. But Kevin, if anybody knows the people at LinkedIn, it's you. So if you can't get it done, then seriously, what are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I'm going to end now. So thank you very much. And I will see you soon. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye-bye.